Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Checkerboard Chat. I'm Josh Lane, sports editor of the Daily Beacon, joined as always by Ethan Stone, Riley Thomas, and Andrew Peters. I don't know how many episodes we've done together. I think this might be number 6. But
we've had 3 posted and 2 haven't. So if you want to go by posted, this is hopefully will be the 4th.
We may be talking to the void.
we got to back up. Regardless, it's always good to be back talking Tennessee sports. Just how we doing today after a busy weekend of Tennessee athletics.
Yeah, very busy weekend, both Tennessee athletic-wise and school-wise. Getting near the end of the semester, also getting near the end of the football season.
Yep.
But basketball season's just starting up for men and women.
Yep.
So a lot to look forward to. I know a lot of people know my favorite sport is basketball. So it's just starting for me.
Favorite time of the year.
But for a lot of people, Tennessee football is what's important.
Yeah.
And they got South Alabama coming up this week. Possibility to be bowl eligible. So there's a lot to look forward to in that aspect. But I guess just going back to Georgia really is I guess the thing that's on everyone's mind. And you can look at it in one of 2 ways, and I choose to look at it as Tennessee is progressing. They're getting better against the big dogs. However, they also got beat by 30 points.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that then. Tennessee, Georgia, obviously they get off to a hot start, score on the first drive of the game. Bayless Jones with a touchdown catch. First quarter, they outscored Georgia 10-7, which I'm trying to remember some of the stats. First time I think that Georgia had been outscored in the first half all year, let alone a quarter.
Right.
I think first time that they allowed double-digit points in the first half, let alone the first quarter. So, again, a very good start for Tennessee, and they've obviously been very good in the first quarter all year, so that's nothing unexpected. But then second quarter, like always, that seems to be where Tennessee really struggles. Just can't get anything done on offense. Georgia shows up on offense on its own. The rest of the game, they outscored Tennessee, I think, 34-7. It kind of turns into a typical blowout in the end. But just, is this kind of what we expected out of Tennessee? I mean, obviously they had a fast start, but in the end, it just kind of looks like any other blowout. And Ethan, as you mentioned, you thought they progressed. Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, by progress, I mean just from year to year. Obviously Tennessee competes in that first quarter. They competed a little bit past couple years also, and it kind of ended up with the same results, I feel like. But it just felt different in that first quarter. You thought coming out of it, there's a legitimate chance Tennessee can do this instead of Tennessee is going to blow this lead. And obviously it's just a 3-point lead, and obviously it still worked out that way, that Georgia, the number 1 team in the nation, still pulled away. Yeah. And that, still kind of to be expected. Josh Heupel is exceeding expectations right now. Obviously they're sitting at 5-5 looking at the bowl, but just Tennessee right now is still playing really good football, and even if they can only do it for 1 quarter, that's still pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, Tennessee should have scored second play of the ball game. Let's just be honest. They could hot start, as always. First quarter, Tennessee comes out balling, coming out with opponents. It was just nice to see Tennessee putting it to Georgia. Not scared of them, not backing down. Doesn't matter if they're the number 1 ranked team in the country. They didn't care. That's what I love about this team. Like we saw it against Alabama and Ole Miss and now Georgia. These guys think they can win every single week, and that is just refreshing to see. As a fan and as someone who has watched UT football, especially lately, you go into some of these games and you're like, man, we have no shot. But now you go into these games like Tennessee can actually compete against these guys. Now, granted, they did lose by 24, whatever it might have been. But it was just nice to see these guys didn't back down, fought hard, and that's all you can take away from it. Yes, moral victories. No one goes for a moral victory, but these guys just played their tails off. It didn't matter who they went up against. It was, up 10-7. Not many teams can say they were ahead at 1 point against the best team in the country. Now, they did score more against Georgia in all season. That wasn't garbage time. But, hey, you can say you scored the most so far against Georgia. Cedric Tillman, amazing day. There's so many good takeaways you can take away from the ball game instead of just saying, oh, you got blown out. Who cares? Best team in the country, you played well.
Yeah, I think something especially interesting about this team in particular is just what Heupel has been able to do with players that were not starters last season.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the number was, but I think 12 of Tennessee's 22 starters last season left. 3 of them went to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Ty Chandler goes to North Carolina. Just you go on and on about that.
Yeah.
But just what Tennessee has been able to do with those players, and not only that, that's kind of why Tennessee eventually lost the game. It just caught up to them.
Yeah.
Georgia has more guys,
Exactly.
and Georgia took advantage of the little mistakes that Tennessee
Yeah.
was making. Because all teams were making mistakes. Georgia made mistakes. Tennessee just wasn't able to capitalize as well as Georgia was able to capitalize.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Davis goes out that one point there in the middle of the game, and you couldn't even really tell at that point. That was when Georgia was hitting its stride on defense, shutting Tennessee down. I did kind of want to talk about Hendon Hooker. Obviously, he's been so good for Tennessee all year, and I don't think he was necessarily bad in that game, but he just wasn't quite as good, quite as efficient as what Tennessee's been accustomed to. And you mentioned the overthrow on the second play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just out of the reach of his hands, and it was kind of like that all night for Hendon Hooker. But the numbers: 244 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, not bad. Good completion percentage, and I don't know his rating, but I don't think that was bad too. But just not quite the same Hendon Hooker as we've been used to seeing all year. And again, you're playing number one Georgia. You have to have that near perfect performance out of your quarterback. And Tennessee just didn't get that.
Yeah, it's when it comes down to it, beating the number one team in the country, you have to be semi-lucky. You have to play very well. And it's just gonna kind of have to be that perfect storm. Tennessee played pretty well in the first quarter, and Hendon Hooker, like you said, he played well. By no means did he play a bad game.
Yeah.
It was not a bad game. It was not. I think I said it in my notebook. Actually, it was not enough to beat the number one team in the country. You have to have a near perfect game from any quarterback to beat a defense that is as elite as. Physically demanding to win the game as Georgia is.
Yeah, and I think honestly, not just him alone, but there was a little more juice. You could tell playing against the best team in the country. He threw the interception. I'm not really sure if that was a miscommunication on that pick. I'm not really sure what happened there. It looked like he thought his receiver was either running a slant or a different pattern, and then the receiver did like a little curl route. So I think there was a little more juice in Hooker as compared to a Kentucky or somebody else. But like you all said, he played as well as he could have against that defense that is probably 20-plus deep, and they can just rotate people in and out. And their bench players would start on Tennessee. Let's just be honest. So they're just so quick, so fast, well coached. The game was fine, like you said, Ethan. Tennessee had to play close to as perfect of a game to even come close to beating them, and obviously it didn't happen. But Hooker can take some good things, but also he didn't play as well as he could have, learn and live from it, and get ready for South Alabama.
I don't know if y'all have heard of this storyline, but apparently Hendon Hooker doesn't play well in cold weather. Have you guys seen this?
Apparently.
I've heard of that.
Apparently.
So-
That's what Kentucky thought.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all want to talk about that in a minute, but that's one thing to note from the game. It was a little bit colder than the games he's played so far. I mean, Lexington last week was probably colder, but that's one thing to consider going into these next couple of games is he going to play bad because it's cold outside, or I don't know. I don't know how
it was a pretty good defense.
I've seen I looked it up because I wanted to kind of reassure my point, but I'm seeing a couple of articles from when he was at Virginia Tech, and they all talk about how the cold weather altered his game. So I don't know.
Well, and also
like more inaccurate, maybe.
Fumbles and not throwing well.
Well, and also Heupel wasn't the coach of Virginia Tech, but another
that's
story.
true.
So
I mean, that is interesting to watch. Obviously, everyone kind of thought that narrative was stamped out against Kentucky, but I didn't think about that.
he debunked that one pretty easily.
Yeah.
SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Yeah, okay.
People will laugh about it, but
I just thought it was funny. The Kentucky radio stations genuinely thought he was going to play back because it was going to be cold. Yeah, he threw for 400 yards.
Yeah.
Okay.
little stuff like that would mess with you more than you think. Especially, it'll kind of be exemplified against the number one team.
Yeah, and I mean,
Georgia.
He threw for 240 yards. I mean, like, how is that? That's not a bad day at all. Yes, the interception, but also too, that D line's so good. He was getting pressured all day long. So I mean, like, there's a lot of factors going against Hooker, minus the cold weather, whatever. But it's the best team in the country. How else can you do that?
I think something really important to talk about that not enough people are noticing is Javonte Payton going out really hurt.
Was that first, second drive of the game?
Yeah. Hendon Hooker and Javonte Payton are like best friends when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like the connection is definitely there. I think it was 6 of 7 in 6 of 7 of his recent games coming into this one he had scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
So Peyton Ramel Keaton played well.
He did.
I don't want to say that he did
Yeah.
not play well because he really did when
Yeah.
he came in. He had that one. They did like a little screen slant thing.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure what it was. I'm not good enough to know in football. But it was a beautiful play.
It was.
And Keaton played it to perfection.
Yeah.
You know,
And
he's just fast enough
yeah.
to be able to do that. But getting to my larger point, Peyton can just outrun people.
Mhm.
And so some of those passes that just barely miss the fingertips of
Yeah.
Keaton
Yeah.
or like the fingertips of even Cedric Tillman.
Yeah.
But there was one of them down the sideline that missed Tillman wide open. Those with Peyton in the driver's seat for that, Peyton probably catches them.
Yeah.
Of course,
And
yeah.
It's just kind of, I'm not saying it's an excuse because Hooker should still know, hey, Javonte's not out there. I need to throw it a little less
yeah.
less juice just because I know like my fastest dude isn't on the field.
Right.
But he's used to that. He's
Of
used
course.
to knowing, hey, Javonte's down there. I'm gonna chuck it, and this is a touchdown likely because
Yeah.
that's just the connection they have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Peyton's injury definitely hurt it because with the guy that obviously his first quarter he scores, a touchdown almost every first quarter, and now that element. I mean, obviously it's weird how he's not, the rest of the game, but taking away a guy of that talent and of that magnitude on the offense, it changes the game plan a little bit. I'm like Keaton, like you said, played a great game, but he's not Javonte Payton. Let's just say how it is. And I mean, Hyatt, is a great player, but he hasn't probably lived up to the hype so far, which has been interesting to me. I think that's an interesting storyline this year. Scored one touchdown, so he didn't step up into that role as Peyton has been this season. So missing one of your top receivers is not good. And also another thing, you cannot run the football. I mean, that just also didn't happen. Tom being out, and then Jabari Small did as good as he can. Hooker, they try to get him running a little bit. He had a couple of decent runs, but against that defense that's so quick and just so beefy up front, you're not going to get much past the line of scrimmage running football.
See, that's another point that I thought of was that, again, it goes back to Georgia's defense being so good, and Tennessee's line just couldn't do anything against it.
Yeah.
But Hooker had pressure all night, and he was. It looked to me as if he was just trying to force too much on the ground. He had 17 carries here, which is more than Jabari Small had.
Mhm.
So what does that say about your run game? But 17 carries for 7 net yards. Like he's trying to do a lot. He wasn't escaping pressure as much. He's getting sacked a lot. I mean, just couldn't get much on the ground. And you bring up Jabari Small, Tyon out again. These injuries, especially in the run game, we thought that Tennessee was going to have that 1-2 punch with Small and Evans, and they just haven't been healthy all year.
Yeah, they really have never been able to be healthy this year. Tyon Evans being out of this game was obviously important to it.
Mhm.
But even though the rushing wasn't great, and I might get some eye rolls from this, the offensive line played really well.
Yeah.
Like
as good as they could against that defensive line.
I mean, that front seven is ridiculous.
Oh,
that's
disgusting.
It's one of the better front sevens probably in the past 20 years
Of all
in the
time,
sport.
yeah.
And you can say Miami back when they were a powerhouse
Sure.
and stuff like that. But getting back to the point, the offensive line gave Hooker time to throw.
They did.
And that was the thing that I was worried about going into the
Mhm.
game. I didn't think Hooker would have enough time to be able to run the offense because sure, Heupel has his scheme ready.
Mhm.
Heupel has people moving around, a way to win the game, but they're not even making their routes usually, and the front seven is usually on their opponents for Georgia. So even though it didn't do too great in the running game, and that's obviously an offensive line kind of thing, like they make the holes, they make the running game work. And pass coverage, they were fantastic.
When their pressure would get back there, though, was when you try the run, got a yard or two, you get in always passing situations, they pin their ears back, and just come rush you. I mean, in that situation, that you can't stop those guys. Let's just be honest.
You can only do so much.
Exactly.
That's why it was a problem for Hooker.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
was good throwing the ball because he was back there. He had the time.
Right.
He just was missing the throws.
Yeah.
But when he usually was able to outrun defenders, because like when, let's say, Ole Miss catches up to him, Hooker can probably outrun those guys. He can't do that against Georgia. They're a little better than that.
And those long developing plays that Heupel likes to run, they just were not working because your play action where you would sit a little bit and try and make either Tillman or somebody else do a long route to get open, that just wasn't happening because their front seven would just not have, or they would just get back there and Hooker would have no time for that play to develop. You saw that against Kentucky where a long play like that happened against Georgia. We tried that a couple times. It just did not work.
Yeah, I could count on about 3 hands how many wide receiver screens Heupel ran in the first
because he had to.
And it was perfect.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you have to do because you got to realize, hey, Georgia's going to kill us
Exactly.
if we keep just sitting in the pocket. Like, it's just not going to work.
Exactly.
And he did it every once in a while. Like, he kind of vary it so he'd get the ins out saying, like, hey, I got to go cover that wide receiver screen because they're just going to throw it to Devontae Payton. He'll have 2 blockers, and he's the fastest dude in the field.
Right.
Then he gets injured. Can't do that too much
Can't
more
do that
because
at all.
Jalen Hyatt, I guess, is your next option, but like you said, he's been kind of iffy. And you know, like I said earlier, Ramel Keaton, he did well in that role. That was really the only guy that they were doing those wide receiver screens, the little slant passes, little quick stuff to the outside, just to get the front 7 out of the game because that's what you got to do if you're Heupel. And he played that really well in the first half, and then Kirby adjusted really well. Of course, kind of figured out
as a good coach should.
Maybe we should stop that stuff to the outside. What are they going to do outside of that? And once they did that, it was over. Yeah.
So let's talk about the other side of the football then, Tennessee on defense, which I think, all things considered, could have played worse. You know, of course, Georgia doesn't have the number 1 offense in the league. Their defense is carrying the way, but in total, I don't think it was too bad. The score kind of looks worse than what it was, but I mean, let's see, Stetson been at 213 yards and a touchdown. I guess that's probably about average for him. I don't have his numbers up.
Yeah.
But you know where they did get burned was on the ground again, and you know Tennessee's run defense been suspect for a while. 274 yards, 4 touchdowns. Forget Georgia's running back James Cook, who had 2 of them right there. So again, Tennessee's defense, I guess, you know, it's a bit of a problem at this point. I don't know if we want to, you know, chalk it up to number 1 Georgia or whatever it is at this point, but I don't know how else to assess the defense right now. I know recently Tim Banks was just nominated for some award for the top assistant. And I don't know if it's his schemes that are working and the players that are just missing tackles or they're tired from the offense. I don't think time of possession was that big of an issue this game or what, but it's a bit of a question mark right now for Tennessee's defense.
Yeah, I wanted to chalk it up to time of possession last week. I thought for sure that was it. That really just this game kind of proved me wrong a little bit because time, like you said, time of possession really was not an issue this one. I mean, Tennessee wasn't moving actually as fast, I think, as they did, and most of that is just because Georgia's a good defense.
Sure.
We've said that about 700 times. If you haven't figured that out, Georgia's pretty good at defense. But so Tennessee kind of slowed down a little bit. They had more time on the sideline to rest for the defense to, you know, scheme against the Georgia offense that they're not great. Like, James Cook was good. James Cook is a good running back. Stetson Bennett is an okay quarterback.
He's a backup.
He's not bad. He's not bad by any means, but he's not like go out there and win the game. He had some overthrows. Yeah. He had some stuff that Tennessee should be able to capitalize on that they just really didn't on defense. There were several times that, you know, Cook would just break off a big run after it seemed like Tennessee had finally figured it out. You know, they're getting them on 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and they're like, okay, they're going to punt, give Tennessee the ball back, and they'll be driving the field, and it'll be, you know, a 1-possession game. And it just never was. Yeah. It just kind of never worked out that way.
Yeah. I'm looking at the rushing numbers right now. All the rush longs kind of stand out to me. You know, 39 yards, 14 yards, 15 yards, 13 yards, 24 yards. We just couldn't really seem to stop those big breaks. So I don't know if that's, like you said, I don't know if that's something with an execution problem. I'm not sure what that is, but yeah, it just seemed like we couldn't really manage to just stuff them at the line like they obviously did to us.
That makes me think that it's more on the players and maybe not on Tim Banks, because it seems like he's getting to plays where his guys are in the right position to make that tackle. Yeah. And they just haven't been doing that. It was an issue against Kentucky, and I guess here again today, I'd love to see it. I haven't seen the numbers on missed tackles, but I'm sure it's pretty high for Tennessee right now.
I think the thing you saw on Saturday was just the talent discrepancy between the two teams.
That's what it comes down
It's
to.
the big thing. I mean, their O-line was getting holes so big you could put an 18-wheeler through them. I mean, like on that Cook run where he ran for 48 yards untouched. Yeah. I think on Saturday you just saw that recruiting on defense is obviously – the defense is the main issue of just depth and just talent. Obviously, when you have 30-plus players leave the season before, it's going to happen. I mean, let's just be honest. But they're playing – they're getting a lot more out of them, the coaching staff, than what, you know, we as fans or as media thought they would be this season. But just in general, you just saw on Saturday the depth was an issue, the talent between – I mean, we talk about Georgia's defensive line up front. Their O-line is also massive. I mean, those guys are all NFL prospects, and you could just tell the difference between Tennessee's front seven versus their O-line, and they were just manhandling him. Stetson had all day to throw, and I mean, let's just be real, he's a backup, and he's doing as what he needs to just win ball games, and that's all they need him to do. They just rely on the defense, run the football. Kirby just plays super conservative, and they just win ball games.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
Sometimes it's easy enough to answer Georgia's just a better team.
It's easy as that.
Sometimes, like you kind of want to break it down some. Say that the defensive line is kind of struggling.
Yeah.
And say Hooker didn't have a great game. They're just a better team.
I mean, they're just a very sound, well-coached football team that know what they're doing. They've been there, done that. The talent is unreal. The talent gap between, as of now, Georgia and Tennessee is obviously leading very, very Georgia, and you could just tell on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't like to be a moral victories guy, and I'm still not going to be.
Of course.
But Tennessee, they did better than you would think they would have done heading into the season.
Yes.
You would think heading into the season against a team like this, if you had that knowledge that Georgia is going to be this good this season.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season, I'd say 60-0.
Of course.
It's just Heupel does not quite have the guys that he should be winning this much games.
I mean, especially after week 1 when they shut down Clemson, who we thought would be a lot better. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. Yeah. And then now going into it, we're just like, we actually, Tennessee has a chance of, putting up some points. And they did. Mm-hmm. And they were up by 3 points. And that's a lot more. You can take that away from being up 3 points on the best team in the country, one of the best defenses of all time. Mm-hmm. Yes, you lost by 24, but there's a lot of good things you take away from it. Just momentum building blocks. And it's just another step forward for Heupel and company.
Yeah, more points than anybody else had all year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it doesn't feel like the deflating loss that it would have felt under Pruitt, under Butch Jones.
Yes.
If it's not, I feel like these big losses last season were, just
deflating,
breaking the team apart a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. This one didn't feel like that.
Well, they all seemed fine.
Yeah.
I mean, all the players just seem happy as ever. They're like, sure, they got beat by 24 or whatever. Let's go whip South Alabama.
Exactly.
And go get a bowl.
Next game.
I mean, last year they lost to Georgia, right? And
yes.
that was the first of 6 or 7 straight.
Yeah.
And then the team fell apart. I mean, I
literally fell apart
there because it was amazing how that team was so decent. I'm not even going to say good because they were looking okay. At that point.
Yeah.
They're leading Georgia
at halftime. At halftime,
right?
yes.
And
then just stopped them on the 1 yard line on 4th and goal.
Yeah, and then right there, that is the turning point.
Yes.
I don't know what Pruitt told them, but they just fell apart. The entire rest of the season, they just fell apart, and I mean, it blows my mind even to this day because it makes no sense. Because I remember I was working that day, so I wasn't able to actually watch it.
Right.
And I saw the halftime score, and I'm like, wow, Pruitt's got these boys playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was I wrong?
Wasn't you wrong?
Take it easy. We got an easy second half.
I think the big thing for me at this point last year, let's just be honest, I could honestly care less about what happened. This time last year, I was so down and out about UT football. I was like, this is a joke. This is miserable to watch. To have a meaningful football game in November, yes, you lost by 24, but just actually wanting to watch a game in November like that just felt great.
I mean, I'll add one more thing. There were 100,000 people there to watch that game.
Yeah.
Can you? I
in
can't
November.
believe that. I still can't believe
Me
that.
neither.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That makes no sense that 100,000 people would show up to watch Tennessee lose by 24, and they're happy with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody was really happy leading the game.
For some reason,
It's like, 17 points. Let's go.
Let's go.
That kind of, I guess, that's a microcosm of just how Tennessee football has been in the past.
Exactly.
They're happy.
And they're happy. They're not deflated by, like you said, Andrew, with a loss like that. They're actually like, hey, you take some good takeaways from it, come out of there, okay, happy.
And maybe happy isn't the right word.
Not
I guess
happy,
more content.
Content, yes.
Content is the better word.
Because you going in, you had low expectations, best team in the country, best defense. They're like, hey, you competed for about a half. You take that away. That's fine. Content. Very good word. I like content. Instead of pissed off.
Writer, Ethan.
Yeah. You should be a writer.
Instead of this time last year, you're pissed off and about Pruitt, but now you're like, hey, I love you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of meaningful games in September, Tennessee out South Alabama. That's the matchup of the year. But obviously, big news for Tennessee. They can win. They can clinch a bowl game with a win here. Don't know a ton about South Alabama. Obviously, they're not too good. I think they're 5-5 in whatever conference they're in. But you think Tennessee's a heavy favorite right now. So obviously, just going in, Tennessee's mindset is let's take this just as seriously as we would the Georgia game.
Yeah.
If we overlook it, then we can get beat. But take it seriously, and then we can celebrate Saturday night going to a bowl game.
Yeah, and I know people that don't watch too much college football. Once again, they may laugh at this. The most dangerous team is one that has absolutely nothing to lose.
You're right.
And South Alabama
Yeah.
has less than nothing to lose. This is a team that has been a Division I program for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've been to one bowl game. They lost.
Yeah.
So maybe two. It might be 2 bowl games, but regardless, it's been like 5 years since they've been to a bowl game.
Yeah.
And they lost both of them. They want to go back. They have Tennessee and Coastal Carolina, which both of them are not gimmies. They're going to put everything into both of these games. Like, you can, I mean, at the beginning of the year, they were actually playing pretty well. Louisiana, you can say what you want about, why they were ranked 25th, but they were ranked 25th heading into a game against South Alabama. Louisiana beats them by 1.
Yeah.
And, the South Alabama team, sure, it's like kind of a mid-major, not what you'd think of when you think of a team that could beat Tennessee right now in the season. But like I said earlier, they got nothing to lose. They'll go out there and try and win it because they're trying to get a bowl game, and it's that important to this program.
I think the thing for Saturday it needs to be a get right game for the defense because they have Georgia had a lot of yards, Kentucky, Alabama, Ole Miss ran all over them. This needs to be a momentum. Obviously, the last 2 games can be for the defense, a momentum grabber heading into potentially a bowl game, a couple more practices in December, a get right game for the defense, get them motivated. And just have some good tape on film, get some pressure, hold them to get off the field on 3rd down again. This is a get-right game for the defense, in my opinion. We know the offense is going to score. Let's just be honest. The offense will put up points. We know that heading in there. The thing I want to watch is the defense actually laying their foot on the ground, stopping South Alabama when they should. I want to see them get off the field at the right time, so I'm on 3rd down, force some turnovers, get sacks, hold them to not many points. Just want to see them go out there and ball out as they should against a lower opponent.
Yeah, and I think I should preface it also saying, South Alabama, they hung around with Louisiana earlier in the year. They hung around with, some other top-of-the-line Sun Belt opponents. That sounds weird, but, for what it's worth, they're playing in those games. Now, it's only fair to say that Jake Bentley, he was their quarterback. He was the guy at South Carolina a few years ago.
That beat Tennessee in 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Who
Jake
was
Bentley,
17.
he was playing really well. Had 15 touchdowns, I think 3, maybe 5 interceptions, some number like that. But regardless, he got hurt mid-season. So they are not playing at the level that they were at the beginning of the season. I believe their quarterback right now is Desmond Trotter, and he's really not doing too hot right now. He's really struggling. The offense in general is really struggling. But their defense is still the same. Their defense is still putting up pretty decent numbers, and that's hard to judge against Tennessee, I guess, because they just move so fast, and it probably will be a problem for South Alabama. But it's not a team that you should necessarily count out just because they're from the Sun Belt.
Couple of things I've seen about South Alabama. In the first quarter, they have been outscored 67-45. So look for that in the first quarter. Obviously, Tennessee's first quarter is the best quarter out of all 4, honestly.
Their record is 28 against Mizzou, is that right? Do you think
I think 28, or South Carolina 28.
4 touchdowns?
I think they easily could do that. Another thing is, too, they beat Bowling Green by 3, who Tennessee by 32. Now, the one good thing about South Alabama this season they have done is beat Butch Jones. That makes me very happy. So I will applaud them for that. I love it. But good old Butchie boy got lost to them. So I appreciate them for that. But I'm sorry you may have to get killed on Saturday.
They did. They beat Butch Jones. They won 4 other games, and they're 5-5.
They're 5-5.
They honestly, oh man, this might sound really bad, but they genuinely might put up more of a fight than Vanderbilt. Like I actually,
I'm expecting that.
It's very possible.
Like I would think Tennessee is likelier, if that's a word, to beat Vanderbilt
more
than
likely.
or South.
More likely.
More likely. Thank you for
likelier.
I should be a writer.
You should be a writer, Josh.
We all should be.
But yeah, they're more likely. They're more likely to be beat by South Alabama than they are by Vanderbilt, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we'll see what happens. I think Tennessee might be celebrating their first bowl since 2019. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Played Tax Slayer Bowl, Indiana. Yeah.
They beat Indiana.
Beat them. Down at halftime, JG had his great performance again.
Were they invited to a bowl last year? And then
last year, the SEC was all going to play in a bowl game.
Yeah. Okay.
And then at the end of the year, now the football team got COVID, and so they didn't play. So we know that's what happened. Exactly, that's what happened. So they would have played a bowl game last year at 3-7.
I really believe that conspiracy theory that Pruitt just didn't want to go.
Oh
I'm not kidding around.
Or Plowman or somebody said, yeah, we got COVID, we're not going to play. I genuinely believe that as well. There's no way.
I honestly think that.
I agree that 100%.
That team was just, I mean,
terrible.
I don't want to just sound like a downer, but that team was pathetic.
At that point in the season, would they even want to play with each other?
Yeah, that's
No,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
The
Why would
team
they want
seemed
to?
like they hated each other, and that's kind of, I guess, that is helped by the fact that 12 people left in the offseason. Well, 12 starters left.
Starters,
like
30 plus.
People, yeah, 30 people left in the offseason.
Yeah.
People didn't like Jeremy Pruitt. I think that's fair.
That's a pretty well made assumption. Yeah.
I think what Tennessee should have done is you find the intramural champion from that year for flag football, and you put them on the field.
I mean,
Now that is something I would have gone to watch. I would have paid money to go watch that.
Probably would have been Vanderbilt.
Quick sidebar: have you guys heard the story of Georgia Tech versus what was that school? They beat them, Cumberland College.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, 200 to nothing.
They beat them 222 to nothing.
Yeah.
Your comment about the flag football thing, that's funny because Cumberland College, that was the exact situation that
Oh,
happened
really?
there. They had John Heisman in Georgia Tech, like the best football team in the nation.
Right.
They're playing a bunch of like engineering
Scrubs.
majors.
Yeah. Yeah.
They literally were just like, hey y'all, we want to go play football against these guys. We kind of have to.
We kinda
because
have
we
to.
lost in baseball.
Yeah.
Bad.
That is great. Oh man.
Classic.
Yeah, quick history lesson for you. That's a fun story.
That's
I
a
love
fun
that
story.
so much.
There you go. So let's talk a little bit of basketball now. Starting with the men, I guess. Tennessee, they play ETSU Sunday afternoon. It's a pretty easy win, 94-62. Never really in doubt. Just another kind of, let's just clean everything up before we have a tough game this weekend, which they do. But, Olivia Kamwa, I think, probably had the most impressive game, 23 points, 8 rebounds. Kenny Chandler, of course, filled up the stat sheet again, 16 points. John Fulkerson came back. He didn't score that much. He played 22 minutes. He did grab 10 rebounds. So he was, he did have an impact there. And I think defensively, we can talk about that a little bit later. But I think you're starting to see some signs there. But just another, non-conference kind of easy game. Just what are your takeaways from that?
Yes, the ETSU non-conference. Yes, they're first-year head coach Desmond Oliver obviously used to be a Tennessee assistant, but ETSU is they're not a pushover. They're going to be a good team. They're going to be a team that's going to be fighting against Appalachian State and other guys like that for the Southern Conference championship. They're a decent team. They've got some players over there, and that kind of showed on Sunday. Also, they got some guys that can put the ball through the hoop. It's they couldn't get it together for 2 periods, but when it came down to it, like they put up a pretty decent fight in the first half, especially. But moving forward, just from takeaways on a Tennessee side, I thought Fulkerson was the most interesting story apart from Olivia Kamwa, who I can go on about this literally for an hour. Kamwa, I have always felt had this in him. Since day one when he stepped on campus, I was like, that guy could be a baller. And Rick Barnes did too. He thought so as well. He was like, this guy can be a Grant Williams type player. I think he said that actually 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He was like, this guy can be a Grant Williams type of player. He just has to apply himself.
Yeah.
And he's got to put in the work and get to the point where he knows the game enough, where he gets himself in the right physical shape to be able to dominate people. And I get it's East Tennessee State. I get they're not the most physical people, but he did that to him Sunday. Yeah. Absolutely. He was everywhere.
Yeah.
He wasn't just posting up either. He was driving in the lane and kicking out. And it's little stuff like that. He was drawing like 3 defenders at a time.
Yeah.
And stuff like that shows that the opponent is respecting him.
Right.
The opponent is respecting just how good Kamwa was playing that game.
I think, like you said, one of the biggest takeaways, going back to your point, to me, it's just Kamwa this whole season through 2 games. We're not saying he's Grant Williams, but you can compare it because Grant, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, the growth is astronomical. Like this time last year for Kamwa, and even 2 years ago when he stepped on campus, there were times where, as when we're watching the game, it's just like, dude, what are you doing out there? Like you just, obviously Rick Barnes saw it before, most of us did, like, hey, like this guy just needs a couple of games to get under his belt, grow a little bit, and it's showing right now through 2 games. He, to me, is the most impressive part about this team. Yes, Chandler, of course, but just to see the growth of him, I just, like you all said, I see the Grant Williams in him, the growth from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, back-to-back SEC Player of the Year. I'm not saying Kamwa could be that, but just the growth by this coaching staff, yet again, on another player like that, under-recruited, undervalued, to grow them, to build them in the gym is just phenomenal. I love to see it.
I think it's huge just to see a guy like that in his second game after a season where he's not really on the floor that much, and when he is on the floor, he's not doing much. He took 14 shots. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
2 for 2 from 3. He's going to be able to stretch the floor, which is going to be awesome. He played great defense, but my biggest takeaway from him is just I think he stepped into the season really quickly, and yeah, I don't know. We've said everything there is to be said about him, but it's just I don't know, being able to come on the floor that quick and take 14 shots without just full confidence, making shots, shooting threes. I think that's pretty big.
Yeah, he's the wild card guy, I guess. I didn't expect him to be at the level he is, kind of to your point, Andrew. At the beginning of the season, I guess for Tennessee to be able to make a deep run in the playoffs, I was like, okay, Kennedy Chandler's got to get his check. He's doing that so far. I mean, obviously it's early, but he's doing that so far. Fulkerson's got to come back and play decent, and I would say that's close to a check because he gets the 10 rebounds. He had 6 points. He could have had a lot more. He missed a lot of layups. I think that just comes down to his broken thumb.
He was wearing a cast.
I mean, he's wearing a freaking cast on his
Yeah,
arm. Like,
definitely bothering
he's obviously not going to be 100% in that. And I feel like once that comes off, once you get into December, once you get into January, I don't think that's going to be as much of a problem. So I'm going to say half check for that.
Yeah.
And then you just got to say Vescovi, Bailey, Justin Powell, they got to shoot how we expected them to. And Josiah James has to go out there and just keep being like the Mario guy, the guy that does everything.
Yeah.
And you have all those guys, but one I didn't expect was Olivier Kamwa turning into Grant Williams.
No.
I absolutely did not expect that. So if you add that to Josiah Jordan-James, who is playing very well this year, by the way.
Yeah.
John Fulkerson, who's looking to play very well. Kennedy Chandler, who's killing it. This is a ball team. This is a ball team.
It's an interesting point that you bring up because Desmond Oliver, in his post game, had a lot of interesting things to say. Obviously, he was Rick Barnes' assistant here at Tennessee for 6 years or whatever it was, so he's very familiar with this team, with this system. Probably recruited a lot of these players. But he basically said Tennessee has the talent on its roster to be a Final Four team.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're 2 games into the season, but I mean that's a pretty bold claim. But it's coming from someone who knows the program, so maybe there's a little familiarity bias there or whatever. But I mean, did you think that's like a legit claim? Does Tennessee have it? Obviously, I guess they have the talent, but do you think that might actually happen?
I definitely do, because I think one of the things you said that this team could be like the 31-win team in 18-19. The difference between that team and this team, yes, you had Admiral and Grant, but they went maybe 7-8 deep a game. This team can go 10 easy or more. So, to me, that speaks volumes. You can go to one guy or this guy or the next guy, whoever's on, whoever's off. You don't have to just rely on Grant or Admiral. You've got Chandler, you've got Fulke, you've got now Kamwa, Hunley Hatfield whenever he gets going. Powell can shoot lights out. And, I mean, also last year, a big takeaway for me from last year is scoring was at a premium to me last year at some points. Tennessee last year go 5, 6, 7 minutes without scoring a bucket. This year so far, they've scored 90+ in 3 games. Yes, one exhibition, but that's impressive. Yeah. I love it. I love to see some shooting guys confident they can make these shots again.
When you have Jemima Shack as your 11th player, you're pretty good.
You're pretty dang good.
Jemima Shack has played okay when he's been in the game.
Yeah.
He's usually when those guys come off the bench, I want to preface this by saying I love Devontae Gaines. He was an awesome player. Yeah. When he came off the bench, you're like, he could turn the ball over at any time.
Yeah.
He could turn the ball over at any time.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't his thing. He was a defensive player.
Yes.
And he wasn't a fantastic offensive player. That's nothing against him. I love Devontae Gaines.
That's
he
just
was awesome.
what he was. Yeah.
Jemima Shack, he gets on the court and I'm like, he could mess around and throw a dunk.
Exactly.
He hasn't quite shown that yet. But you can just tell by the way they carry themselves. Him, Debunji. You got Brandon Huntley Hatfield, who's not quite living up to potential, but I don't feel like any of these guys would go out there and I'm like, oh no, get the ball away from him.
I agree. That was last year, like you said, Devontae Gaines, man, why is he on the floor right now? He can play defense, but it's just basically on offense, it's 5-on-4 when he's on the floor. This time this year, you got 5 people who can drop a buck on you at any point in time.
Yeah, and I mean that's not even necessarily saying that we don't have a guy that can't do both ends. It's just I'm confident in the depth this team has, and that's kind of different than saying we've got guys who are really good at shot blocking. We've got guys that are really good at shooting the 3. Everyone can do a little bit of everything.
Exactly.
Justin Powell can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
he's not just a shooter.
No.
Heck, he's a shooter.
Yeah. By all means, he is a shooter.
Santiago Vescovi, he stepped it up defensively too. He's playing well. So the guy Ziegler is the surprise of the season to me. I mean, Rick Barnes was talking about him like crazy. He's like, this guy's crazy. Vols fans are going to love him. He's shooting lights out. And I actually leaned over to Josh while we were at the game. I was like, Zakai's like, he's been okay.
Yeah,
he's been okay.
he's been
and
okay.
then like the rest of the game, he was good. He
Yeah.
was really good. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, they might actually have a player here.
Yeah.
In this guy.
Talk about a guy who can just provide some energy. I mean, he just came in, was running around, going inside, getting rebounds. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the commentator. I was watching the game on TV. The commentator just kept talking about he just disappears and then he pops up and has the ball. And I mean, he's just a fun player to watch.
Yeah.
He's just like.
He's fun, like you said.
Yeah.
That's the best way to say it. He's fun. He's got talent, obviously, and you would think he'd be a defensive liability.
Mm-hmm.
It is the opposite. He is like he's kind of terrifying to watch.
Yeah.
Like I'm scared, and I don't even have the ball. I'm sitting 90 feet away, and I'm like he's locking people up, and it's like these like 6'2" guys have got to be like, why am I not dunking on this dude at all times? And it's just you can't.
You can't.
He's just so good at what he does in that, and you know, you can kind of tell that he definitely flew under the radar of a lot of teams.
You know
he's
he
a
did.
steal. He
Yeah.
doesn't look like a freshman out there.
At 5'9", I think that's probably why.
And 5'9" is a stretch. He looks a
Yeah.
little bit smaller than that.
That's a little
I
generous.
think I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember on the media days, like, he stood up and we were right next to each other. I'm about 5'9", 10". I'm not a tall dude. I was a little taller than him. I'm saying, I was like, wow, this is a D1 basketball
basketball player.
And
Like,
then
what
he
happened
goes
to
out
me?
there and then he goes out there and does what he does. I mean, he's not lighting the world up by any means. I feel like we're pumping the guy up a lot. He's not lighting the world up. He's doing way better than I thought he would be doing. I thought he'd be entering the game and turning the ball over and then getting benched. But he's not.
Yeah, I bring up that height because Tuesday Rick Barnes spoke, and so did Zakai, but basically he's talking about his competitiveness because obviously got that chip on his shoulder because he's not as big as everybody else. Was maybe a little under-recruited at a 3-star, but just as competitive, as energetic as anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's been huge for him this far. But also I do want to talk about Kennedy Chandler. Obviously he wasn't necessarily the star, but had another great game. Again, go back to what Coach Oliver said. I think called him a young Kyrie Irving, talking about the point guard. Maybe he's the best in the country. So again, he's gonna get his time to shine. Yesterday, or not yesterday? When was that? Saturday, Sunday?
Sunday.
I need Christmas break back.
Long week.
Yeah, Sundays. He kind of took the second chair, but still very solid again. I think we're going to see a lot of Kennedy Chandler in that kind of that fashion this year. But I mean, is that maybe fair to say he's the best point guard in the country right now? Do you know of anyone better?
I mean, it's hard to say. You got some pretty daggum good point guards coming up.
do.
Villanova has Colin
Yeah.
Gillespie. He's a daggum good point guard. You
Yeah,
got
he
J.D.
is.
Davidson at Alabama. He's playing well right now. Kennedy Chandler is a ball player.
He is.
He's good. I don't know much else to say. He's hitting his threes like he's a senior. He's composed like he's a senior. He's just doing everything as if he's been there doing it for 20 years. And he's 20 years old.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think we talked about this on an earlier podcast, maybe one that didn't get published, but he hasn't been doing it for 20 years, but he has been playing against the highest level of competition for, at least 4 years in high school, probably more than that. I mean, with the AAU circuit now, it's like you're not just playing guys who live around your area; you're playing guys from all around the country. I'm sure he's seen some of these top point guards and top ball players before. So I think that's kind of where that confidence comes from. This is nothing new to him to be playing on a huge stage. So.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that stood out to me was just his layup that he had, the little opposite hand around the other side of the basket. That was ridiculous. And I think, like you said, there's a podcast episode that didn't get released, but I said that this is the best recruit that Barnes has had to date. Easy. I mean, yes, you had Springer and Keon last year, but what he brings to the team as a ball handler, a shooter, a defender now, I don't think Tennessee has had this great of a talent in the Rick Barnes era, immediately on day one, ever.
He reminds me kind of Jordan Bone.
He does, yes.
He's a very similar player. I'd say, I mean, it's crazy to say this, but I'd say he's almost getting to the point where he's better.
No,
right now.
I think
that's insane to say because Jordan Bone, he's like, I don't know, he's one of my favorite college players. He was just good.
Good.
Like, whenever he pulled up from anywhere, it doesn't matter where he was at the court. He was likely making it.
Yeah.
And he's just, I don't know, he's fast, he's smart, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Chandler, if he can get a defensive game down, a really good one, because it's decent right now.
Yeah.
If he can get a great defensive game down, that's a top 10 NBA pick.
And I mean,
easily.
Back to Bone, like you said, he's a great talent, very comparable. But with Bone, he was here for 3 years. you saw the leap from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. A couple of those guys that Rick recruited first, but Chandler, as soon as he stepped on the IUT, he was already that good.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference between the two. Yes, Bowen was a great point guard, but Chandler on day 1, we all knew this guy is going to be special.
He's quite literally that guy.
Yes.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point there with defense, because I think it must have been after the game the other day, but Rick Barnes was talking about Kenny Chandler, says, yeah, you can look at the scoring, that's good, but he really did not have a good game defensively. It was almost like he had an actual bad game. Forget the scoring. He was bad on defense. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not as knowledgeable in basketball as Rick Barnes is, but what does Kennedy Chandler need to do better on defense? I mean, have we even noticed anything? It's kind of gone over my head, to be honest.
In my opinion, it's mostly just catching up to the college game. Every
Yeah.
freshman, except for maybe Keon Johnson, that's come into this, Tennessee fold against SEC teams. Obviously, they're not playing SEC teams yet, but they're playing D1 teams. Chandler just kind of needs to figure out how fast they are and where to stand at times. It's as simple as that. Maybe talk a little more, communicate a little more. But, he's not playing bad, in my opinion. Rick Barnes is going to say it's bad because it's not perfect. But it's not bad. It's just not, where Barnes believes it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, he did have 3 steals.
Yeah,
so
it can get
a horrible game.
Definitely not awful, but it can definitely get better at the same time. It's mostly, I feel like a lot of young guys when they first come into the league, they're just they don't quite know how fast it's going. They don't quite know just where they fit in. I mean, give him 5 games, I bet he'll know. He's proven me so far that he's a good enough player that he can figure it out.
You all won a first test Saturday against Connor Gillespie. That is you've played obviously a couple of games, getting your feet wet. You'll really find out defensively how much he might need to improve or how good he is defensively if he's guarding Connor Gillespie. Because that guy, like you said, is one of the best point guards in the country. Easy. One of the best, if not the best. And so putting Chandler on him early, 3rd game of the year, that's a true test. We will really see how well defensively or how much he needs to improve on.
Well, that's a good segue into this next, and I think we need to kind of move a little bit faster because we got some things to do. We got this Thanksgiving party
going on and on about
Yeah, we can go on forever.
A lot of stuff to talk about.
Anyways, Tennessee goes up to Connecticut for the Hall of Fame tip-off tournament. Obviously, the big matchup there is with number 5 Villanova. Sunday they'll play. Is it depending on if they win or lose? They play North Carolina or Purdue. So either way, 3, or I guess they're only gonna play 2 big games there, but three good teams. You mentioned Gillespie there, but just what do we expect out of Villanova and Purdue and North Carolina, and just kind of give us a breakdown, Mr. College Basketball.
Yeah, so Villanova, obviously they got Colin Gillespie. That's the guy that we've talked about a whole bunch. Really good player offensively, defensively, it doesn't really matter. If he doesn't get injured last year, Villanova probably goes to the Final Four. It's just as simple as that. He's a great player.
Yeah.
Not much more to say. So I'll get off it. Defensively, Villanova is not fantastic. They're okay. They're okay.
Yeah.
A top 25 team,
Yeah.
sure, but not fantastic defensively. Offensively, they are a juggernaut. They are a really, really good team. I believe it's 7th in the nation right now in 3-point percentage. They're sitting 48% from beyond the line, which is dumb.
Dumb.
Yeah. And that they've got all sorts of. I believe Jermaine Samuels is a guy. I'm blanking on the name of the other guy, but they've got some post players that can really get offensive boards and just mess with you. It's just as simple as that. They're a good offensive team, and Barnes is going to have to kind of figure out where to go from there.
I think it'll just be nice to see Tennessee play against some top level competition, whether it's you got Villanova Saturday and whether it's UNC or Purdue. Because Villanova, top 5 team in the country, barely lost to UCLA on Friday. Purdue has been picked by several people to go to the Final Four. And UNC, first-year head coach. So, obviously different. Coach Williams retired. So, but they've, these 3 teams, and Tennessee included, it's just nice to see some good competition and how Tennessee will, how they, I guess, kind of play against top competition now and just how they stack up compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I think my prediction, my bold, not so bold prediction, is that we come out of the weekend with at least 1 win.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely we have 1 win.
Of course.
But over 2. But I think that I think Villanova is going to be a hard game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like I think they're more favored to win. But I think after that, I think we get, Kenny Chandler plays his first high-level competition along with some other guys. And then he's figuring out, this is what these teams are going to throw at me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you play either Purdue or North Carolina. I guess if you lose, you play the other team that lost.
Yeah.
So we play that second game, and I think they kind of are like, okay, we didn't win yesterday, but this is a game where we've got our bearings,
yeah.
and so I think that we'll come out with a win.
So who would you rather see Tennessee play than on Sunday than North Carolina or Purdue?
I was going to at Mohegan Sun, obviously there's 4 teams. It's Tennessee, Villanova are playing the first day, and then North Carolina, Purdue are playing the second day. Purdue is going to beat North Carolina. I don't see any way Purdue doesn't beat them. I think they're the best team at Mohegan Sun. They're going to move on. It's going to be Purdue. Tennessee, Villanova, I really don't know. I just don't know what to think of Tennessee right now.
Yeah.
I think Villanova is not a great defensive team. I think there's places to exploit. I just don't know if Tennessee can do it. So you can chalk that up whichever one you want. But if they win, they're going to get one win, like you said, Andrew. They're going to get a win. I think I agree with that. I think they're going to get a win at
least
Mohegan
one.
Sun because Tennessee, if they lose, they'll have to play North Carolina. Tennessee will beat North Carolina too.
Yeah.
I'm not high on Hubert Davis in North Carolina right now. I think they're a little iffy. They messed around a little bit too much with College of Charleston last night. Decent team, really high tempo. College of Charleston, they're a good 3-point shooting team, but they weren't playing well, and they just about knocked off North Carolina. So I think they're a little overrated. If you're Rick Barnes, you want to play Purdue because that's a daggum good team. They got Jaden Ivey, who played against against Kennedy Chandler in the under 19. They've got Zach Edey, who's like college basketball's version of Yao Ming. They've got what's that guy's name? Trevion Williams, NBA prospect. They've got guys. They've got guys that can play both ends of the court.
One thing I'm noting is there a Tennessee-Purdue rivalry forming? Because we played them in what? We played them in an early season tournament in 2018, I believe.
Beat them.
And then obviously, we beat them there, and then obviously got knocked out in the tournament by them a couple of years ago. So I don't know. I hope they see Purdue as well, and I think that could be a fun game.
Either game will be a rematch versus the last time because North Carolina came here, beat Tennessee, heartbreaker. Obviously, last time one of the worst calls I've ever seen in my life, but Tennessee lost. That's whatever. That one hurt me so bad. But personally, I would like to see Purdue again, just because obviously, like back to Ethan said, one of the best teams in the country. Rematch from last time we played them. Obviously, it more than likely probably going to be North Carolina, but would love to see Purdue how, like I said earlier, stacks up against a potential Final Four team. So, but either one would be a great competition. Personally, I'd love to see Purdue again.
Yeah, Purdue. I'm not exactly sure what Purdue's doing over there because it seems like they just have a knack for growing 7'5".
Always.
You guys noticed that? They got Matt Harms, who went to BYU last year. Kind of stunk it up, but he played really well for Purdue. Zach Edey, like I said earlier, he's like a Yao Ming type player, and that's not an exaggeration. He's playing well, very well this season. He's number 3 on Kim Palm's Player of the Year rankings. We're 2 games in. This is all kind of arbitrary, but they're a good team, and I would like to see Tennessee play them just because I think that would be an interesting matchup, even more than Villanova, because Nova's a good team, but Purdue's got both ends.
Both ends of the floor.
They can do, they can put points on you at the same time. They'll have Zach Edey throwing your saw into the second row.
So first matchup Saturday against Villanova. That's at 1 p.m. So even if Tennessee loses, then Saturday night you can at least watch the football team.
Be happy.
That's right. Clinch a bowl win. Sunday 1 or 3:30 p.m. depending on who they play. I guess if they win, they might have the 3:30 p.m. game. But anyways, we'll have coverage of that, as always, on the UT Daily Beacon website. Let's kind of shift over to the women's side now. Women's basketball played UCF and USF. They went through the Florida gauntlet there. But they went 2-0. Kind of a tough 2-0, though, with the way their offense was. I mean, Andrew Riley, all of our women's basketball beat writers, just kind of break down what happened to the offense, how somehow Tennessee managed to pull out 2 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the Southern Illinois game, obviously not one of the 2 games we talked about, but Ray Burrell goes down. She literally has 12 points at halftime. Tennessee has to find the offense. Alexis Dye steps up and wins the ball game. Tennessee couldn't hit a 3 till the 4th quarter. So, and then of course free throw shooting. Talked about it a little bit in the exhibition game, how that was a struggle. It's been a struggle every game since then, and including offensively also. And then on Monday night, Tennessee did not hit a single 3-pointer. So somehow, some way, they're finding a ways to win, and the main reason is defense. That's how they're winning these basketball games. They've held every opponent so far to under 50 points. that's super impressive. But the offense has got to step up. They can't be doing this against every team like on Texas on Sunday, who just beat the third-ranked team in the country, Stanford. So they are a very good basketball team. Clearly, they just beat Stanford at Stanford, by the way. So if your offense has got to step up, because Texas held Stanford, I think, below 37% shooting. So another good defensive team. So it wouldn't surprise me if both teams struggle offensively because both defenses are that good, but someone's got to make a bucket at some point. Ray Burrell's still out. She will still be out, according to Coach Harper, so we just got to see what happens.
Yeah, and one thing to note about those games, against UCF, Tennessee had one player in double figures. That was Horston, and then once again, Horston in double figures Monday night against South Florida. Tamari Key also joined her in double figures, but yeah, she can't get anything going on offense. Kelly Harper said it in, I think, probably every media availability so far. The free throws are just destroying them. And they're lucky that they got out of Monday with a win because they won the game at the line. Really with 3 free throws there kind of at the end. Jordan Horston made all 3 of those. She went on 3 separate trips. She missed a shot on each time at the line. But yeah, Jordan Horston, kind of the only offense we have right now
so far.
Hopefully Alexis Dye steps up again. She was great in the first game with Burrell going down. So it wouldn't surprise me if Alexis Dye kind of shook off these 2 kind of rough games and maybe had a better offensive performance.
Like you said, back to Horston, she's a bona fide baller. Let's just be honest. I mean, she's a hooper. Because back to your free throws, she was 6 of 8 from the line on Monday. The rest of the team was 2 for 10. So I wouldn't say carried, but she about dang did. She put the team on her back, 2 late and 1 plays, like you said, sinking 3 free throws. The biggest story for me on Monday was Tamari Key finally got out of foul trouble, and she was a key factor. 10 points, double-double, 6 blocks. She's got to stay out of foul trouble for Tennessee to have a chance in every game. That's, to me, the factor on Sunday. Can Tamari Key stay out of foul trouble and dominate down low again? Because Tennessee scored 42 of their 52 points in the paint. Tennessee lives and dies by the paint, clearly, because they can't make a 3 at this point, sadly. So their paint presence is huge. That's, to me, the big factor on Sunday.
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of clicking now with Tamari Key, obviously in her junior season here at Tennessee, but yeah, like you said, she stays out of foul trouble on Monday. She gets 6 blocks. I think she kind of just one thing I noticed watching that game, she wasn't swatting at shots as much as she was the first 2 games because I think she gets excited to make that play to get that block, and then oftentimes ends up committing the foul, trying to swat the ball. And so I think when she just kind of realizes she is a presence in the paint already, just by putting her hands up, then that's enough to alter some shots.
What I hated to see when I went to the Southern Illinois game, the refs, it seemed like to me they were punishing her for being too big, being taller than literally everybody on the floor. So I think on Monday she figured out, like you said, wasn't necessarily moving her arm to swat it. She's 6'6". She just needs to put her hands up. It's going to alter the shot, get a block. I think she's figuring out how to, use her body, 6'6", to actually defend down low, get rebounds, get blocks, and just be a paint presence for Tennessee.
Well, you mentioned Horston there. Obviously, Key's coming around, but who has been maybe the most disappointing player on the Lady Vols so far?
I mean, on Monday it was Jordan Walker. I mean, she couldn't hit a shot, 0 for 8 from the floor. I think 0 for 3, 0 for 4 from 3. She played well at Southern Illinois. She was a part of the comeback with Alexis Dye. But then last 2 games, she really hasn't made too much of a presence, I would say. So I think some better guard play outside of Horston because Burrell is still out, like I said. Jordan Walker needs to step up just a little bit. And then Tess Darby, she's been starting at the 2 guard, but she's been getting kind of replaced a little early off the bench. So just need somebody to make some shots, whether that's Walker, Darby, Sarah Puckett off the bench. Just need some outside shots to be made instead of just going to Tamari Key in the paint.
That's where the absence of Ray Burrell
exactly.
So much. Not that she was an incredible 3-point shooter last year, but I think she was Tennessee's best. Now they just don't have anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think she's a freshman, so it's hard to kind of judge. But Sarah Puckett was a little bit disappointing. She's a known 3-point shooter. Hasn't really gotten it going so far. She took 2, missed 2 on Monday. So that was a little bit disappointing. But yeah, like you said, Jordan Walker, Alexis Dye, it's hard to judge a player
Yeah.
who's coming from a smaller non-Power 5 conference, but it's been a little bit disappointing.
She had a great first game, but then
Yeah.
last two she's been kind of
Yeah.
not what we thought she could have been as player of the year last year for the Sun Belt. So.
Yeah, so that's been a little bit disappointing. But again, I think a lot of these things are just early season.
Early season, yeah.
Kings trying to work out. So
I mean, it's not getting easier though for Lady Vols. I mean, they have played. This will be probably their fourth straight tough game. I mean, no game has been easy. They played 3 straight against very veteran laden teams, and now you got the 12th team in the country coming to Knoxville after just beating Stanford. They're playing right now on killing. Was it Southern?
yeah, they just won, I believe. Let's see, 88 to 47.
Yeah,
a few
so I
minutes
mean,
ago.
so Texas has honestly played at a very high level, including being favored by 5 points. So it is not getting any easier for Lady Vols. So if they can come out, show their paint presence again, finally make some shots from the free throw line, 3-point, you could see them get a win, but it's going to be a very exciting game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. And before we go, let's hit on soccer real fast because they're still going. They're in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Shout out Lipscomb. Andrew, just again, if you can just run us through the soccer team, what happened the other day, and just kind of what to watch for them going forward.
Yeah, a great game on Friday against Lipscomb. Lipscomb, although they're not a big name team, they were really good.
They beat an SEC team.
Yeah, they beat
Right.
Mississippi State earlier in the season.
Okay.
A packed house at Regal Soccer Stadium, which was pretty awesome to see. But yeah, they played a great game. They got another shutout, which is big for them. They had obviously had all those shutouts early in the season, but kind of started to allow a few more goals. But I think it's a confidence booster that they were able to shut them out. It wasn't the dominating game that we're kind of accustomed to seeing from the Lady Vols against these smaller teams, but nonetheless, a really great game. And it's not a gimme on Friday, but I do think that they're the favored team. I think that they have a really great chance of moving on to the next round. So
Yeah, and that's against Washington State. They got to go up to Michigan, which again, we talked about their seeding and how they maybe they were ranked a little too low. I don't know if they would still be hosting if they were any higher, but they go up to Michigan. That game is on Friday the 19th at 2 p.m. So again, lots of sports happening, a lot of things going on, but we'll have full coverage of everything at the etdailybeacon.com website, so just stay posted there. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you all for being here.
Of course.
Talking sports, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep, pleasure as always.